Yeah. Colleagues, good afternoon once again. Thank you very much, first and foremost, for showing interest to come and attend the B session to what we started looking back at social protection and COVID-19. We are now doing the B session, or I mean B, but we are in a parallel session A. Yes, session 4B, but we are in parallel session A. Yeah. So we'll just wait for an indication from our colleague and to find out if the first speaker from Kenya, Leah Mutoni Mwangi, is available. Okay. Okay. But whilst she's joining, probably I could do the introductions. My name is Vince Chipatuka. I'm sitting in for Mr. Anthony Domingo, who's had problems to log in and to chair this session. So thank you very much, Secretariat, once more for finding a suitable candidate to sit in and chair this session. And I hope that I'm going to ensure that I do the needful. We have 3 speakers, and I would like to go straight into introducing what they will talk about, and also give some brief bio data for my speakers. So as you might be aware, we are behind time, and I presume that this session is going up to lunch, which is 1 o'clock. So immediately our colleague connects. Her name is Leah Mutoni Mwangi from Kenya, who will talk about effectiveness of National Hospital Insurance Fund in the treatment of COVID during the first year of the pandemic in Kenya. Then secondly, we will call upon Ms. Nicola Yon Muti Murefu from Zimbabwe. She works for the National Social Security Authority. She will be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on Zimbabwe's social security system, a case study of the National Social Security Authority. Then we are also privileged on this panel to have Mr. Richard Rory, also from Kenya, who's going to talk about an analysis of Kenya's national social security systems, efficacy in cushioning the vulnerable people from effects of COVID-19. Unfortunately, we don't have Dr. Isaac Chinyoka from South Africa, who was supposed to talk about the global rapid appraisal of country responses to COVID. Just a brief bio about my speakers this afternoon. Ms. Leah Mwangi is a member of staff of the Pwani University, a public university in the Republic of Kenya. Having worked there for the last 7 years, she is also a postgraduate student undertaking a Master's of Art in Medical Psychology, and is in the course of writing her thesis. She's got a keen interest in issues of gender, healthcare, social protection, and continues to grow her career in this field. Secondly, we have Mr. Richard Rory. Richard Rory Nyukundi is a social protection management and administration specialist. He has breadth and depth of experience in different social protection pillars, such as social assurance, social insurance, social security, social assistance, and labor across different countries. Currently, he works as a social protection research and policy analyst at the State Department of Social Protection with the National Social Security Fund of Kenya. Richard also believes that social protection purpose should be to eliminate, as far as possible, the need for its own existence. It is not only an ethical imperative, but a matter of social justice and an essential condition for any country to live. And lastly, but not the least, Ms. Nicola Yon Murefu from Zimbabwe is a social protection expert with over 15 years experience in the social protection research. Currently, she's working for the Zimbabwe National Social Security Authority Department as a statistics and research officer in the Social Security Division. She is a member of various technical working groups in the field of social protection and has published works in this area. She's also a member of the Southern Africa Social Protection Experts Network Advisory Panel and also currently studying her PhD. She holds a Master's of Science degree in Population Studies and a Master's of Science degree in Social Protection Financing. Do we have Leah? Do we have Leah now? Not yet. Then what we'll do, we'll go to invite Richard Rory from Kenya to make a presentation on an analysis of Kenya's national social protection system, efficacy in cushioning the vulnerable people from effects of COVID-19. Let's invite him with a round of applause. Mr. Richard Rory, I believe you have 8 to 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Are you able to make it? Friends, we seek your indulgence. The technical guys are still working on, so I believe your clock is not ticking.
I would advise that since you are the author of your presentation, probably you could already start speaking to your slides because of time.
Vince, you are a dictator. Now, with a light touch. With a light touch, and I think like we have been discussing since morning, indeed, with COVID-19, social protection is at a crossroad. No country in the world ever saw it coming. Even the professors in actuarial science never saw it coming. They never predicted it. No country had prepared. They had prepared for tsunamis, earthquakes, droughts, and all other emergencies, but they are not prepared for this. The rich never thought at any time that they would be in the same category with the poor. And so COVID-19 caught all of us off guard. I'm going to discuss this using the case of Kenya, and basically just a brief, in the next slide, please, we'll move slightly faster. What? Oh, I had forgotten that I had the thing here. Why is it not moving? Yeah, it's not. All right. Is it? All right. Is it okay now? Yeah. All right. Now, if you look at the case of Kenya, we have a population of about 50 million. COVID-19, before COVID-19, 18 million Kenyans lived below poverty line. That's around 36.1%. And the really thing is that due to the measures that had been put, the lockdown, the global economic shutdown, now about 2 million Kenyans lost their jobs. What was the consequence of that? You'll see two things happened. GDP went down, the growth, poverty went up. And I think this happened in all countries. The growth rate of GDP went down, poverty grew, proceed. Oh, it's me to proceed. I'm used to giving commands. Right. Now, if you look at that again, COVID-19 impacted the life cycle. There's no, right from the child to the older person, they were all affected. If you look at the child, because of the lockdown, they missed immunization. Because the lockdown and it was town to town, the parents could not move. There were no vehicles. Because of the lockdown, they had no access to even antenatal and postnatal care. The mothers could not go to the clinics. Because of COVID-19, there was loss of parental care because some of the parents died. And again, if you look at early childhood, I mean, if you look at school age, there was also an effect. Child labor, no access to school, loss of parental care, and again, very, very seriously, there was the issue of early pregnancies, an effect of COVID-19. Then if you look at the youth, there was the issue of drug and substance abuse. They were all at home, bored, doing nothing. They fell into that. Then there was unemployment and the inability to access training. Again, early motherhood. Nothing else they could do. Those who had left school, the ones in high school, the best they could do was to look at each other. You look me, I look you. Then, of course, and then there was, of course, increased crime rates. If you look at the working age, unemployment, inadequate wages, debts were increasing. People are getting into loans. Then there was gender discrimination. There was gender violence. There were no contributions going to the schemes. And there was delays. Then the old age, increased frailty. Of course, there was no care from family because when COVID came, each and every person for himself and herself. Then, of course, there was discrimination in labor. The older persons, like in Kenya, those above 58, they were told work from home. So if your work did not involve working from home, it meant no income. Move on. Now, if you look at that, and this is the most serious of all my presentation slides. The fact that if you look at that, we are all in the same what? Storm. We are all in COVID-19. But you know what? We are not all in the same boat. And that's what happened in Kenya. And that's what even happened here in South Africa. Is what happened in Uganda. Is what happened in America. We are all in the same storm. We are all facing COVID-19, but we are not in the same boat. We were all affected differently. And again, if you look at it, vulnerability due to informality. Those people lost jobs to survive. They moved in Kenya, you would find them now selling mineral water on the streets, selling bananas because they had no another job to do. You find them along the roads selling whatever they could sell. And you could find the same everywhere. Then, of course, there was insufficient coverage. And of course, there was inequality. Now, if you look, it was like the K aspect. And if you look at it, you can see what was dropping. If you look, you'll see, oh, sorry. Gosh, what has happened? Where did I go wrong? You have 3 minutes. No. We just wait. No, you can't do it because this man is harassing me. All right. Now, again, what is critical here? There was increased inequality. There was increased inequality, and again, there was the element of the new poor who had never been factored on board. That being the case, the government moved in. And when the government moved in, of course, there were several issues that it did. The government came up with a multi-agency COVID-19. It increased the cash transfers. There were also those that were going to the person with disability. And of importance, and most important, the youth. There was Kazi Mtaani, where the public work fair, where the youth were being given jobs to work within the towns and villages, and they could be paid for that, just to keep them going. But again, where did the rain start beating us? The rain started beating us because of the social protection system in Kenya, the way it is structured. Before COVID-19, all we had was just social assistance, health insurance, and social security. You realize that in that system, there was nothing like shocks. And that is the national policy of 2011. And in Kenya, we thank God that COVID-19 came as we were reviewing our policy, because it made us now to create a fourth pillar that is looking at shocks. Again, the other thing that is important, because of COVID-19, we realized so many gaps. In terms of delivery of social protection, we realized and noted so many gaps. And among the gaps that you will realize was the issue that there was no coordination. So many people came in wanting to help, and there was no coordination. The private actors, the civil society, everybody was doing something, and that led even to duplication and double dipping. There was also absence of enhanced single registry. We didn't have data. We had for the beneficiaries, but we do know who the poor were. They were all over the streets making noise, but we didn't have a record somewhere so that we could go pay them. Then there was the challenge of inclusion. It also happened that even when they were giving, the ones that knew the officials are the ones that were getting. The rest were being left out. So there was some form of discrimination. There was, of course, the issue of refugees and migrants. And in very many countries, really, refugees and migrants were affected the same. Remember, I said we are in the same boat. I mean, we're facing the same boat, facing the same storm, but we are not all there. So the migrants and the refugees were not being covered as the government was providing this. And then there was the issue of coverage and adequacy. Whatever we were giving was not enough. Now, what have we done? And arising out of that, what did we do as government? Now we have reviewed our social protection policy. Remember, the one I showed you was having 3 pillars: social assistance, social health, and the social security. But if you look at now the Kenya Social Protection Policy 2022, you'll note that it has got 4 pillars. It has got income security, which is non-contributory and contributory. It has social health protection. In fact, Kenya has just reviewed and enacted universal health coverage under the NHIF. Then, of course, we have got a pillar focusing on shock responsive social protection. And there is a pillar dealing with complementarities. We noted that during COVID-19, it was not just enough to give the money if you don't give these other services. So COVID-19 it was really a blessing. Then over and above that, you realize that in that social protection policy, we have brought in issues seeking to expand coverage. We are also seeking to foster resilience. We are also seeking to improve institutional capacity. We want to enhance even access to healthcare. Now, importantly, again, another thing that just fits before you log me out is the issue that Kenya has embraced a systems approach in the delivery of social protection. Because what we noted during COVID-19, without a single registry, without data, you cannot. And if you don't harmonize it, then others get and others don't get. Some even get double. Then, of course, there is the issue of communication, which we noted is quite very important. Now, several lessons have been learned, and among them, of course, is that social protection interventions can have a significant impact as a tool to mitigate poverty. Again, For social protection interventions to be effective, and this is very, very important, they should be premised on proper coordination, coherent mechanisms, and legal frameworks. The other thing is that in rolling out shock responsive social protection programs like COVID, institutional framework to boost capacity and preparedness and timely decision making is necessary. We have also learned that the pandemic also underscored the need of social protection mechanism to cushion the missing middle. Indeed, the biggest challenge we had was that we all went for the poor and the rich. We knew but there were people in between here, the informal, who were not covered by anybody. And so there is need to look at those ones. And finally, I'm just about to finish things. Don't crucify me. Kenya, through the Kenya Social Protection Policy, seeks to embrace a universal social protection approach, which is built upon existing regulations such as ILO, social protection clause, and again, sustainable development goals. And further, the focus shall be more towards extending coverage and achieving comprehensive systems that are adequate and address different risks and needs. And finally, of course, I've tried to talk about that. Of course, the idea of being adaptive, so that we adapt, so that we are flexible. What happened during COVID-19, like the NSSF, we could not pay the members because our benefits are all long-term. And again, the issue of consistency, the issue of accountability, because some of the money that was being paid, it was not possible really, because we didn't have data for the members, and the payments were only one-off. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richard Rory. Indeed, we are experiencing the same storm, but not in the same boat. Okay. So very quickly, and I've been informed, at exactly 13, we are all going to be logged out. So please, the next speakers, let's ensure that we stick to at least below 10 minutes to speak and finish on time. So, karibu sana Leah Mutoni Mwangi. Are you able to get me?
Yes, I can get you clearly.
Thank you very much. Introductions have already been done, such as your biodata has already been given. So I'd like to invite you straight to make your presentation on effectiveness on National Hospital Insurance Fund in the treatment of COVID during the first year of the pandemic in Kenya. And fellow participants,
should I proceed?
yes, you can proceed. You have 8 minutes to make the presentation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present my paper, and thank you for that introduction. So we can proceed to the next slide, please. Or I will continue, and then I think you will be able to catch up with me. So social protection in Kenya is hinged on 3 pillars. And I think my brother has spoken about social assistance. So there is social security, there is social assistance, and there is social health insurance. Myself, I will be covering the social health insurance. Now, NHIF is a government state corporation, and it is mandated to provide accessible, affordable, sustainable, and quality social health to all Kenyans. Now, as a body, NHIF was formed in 1966, and when it was formed, it was a mandatory health insurance for those in the formal sector. However, in 1998, it extended its mandate to include those in the informal sector. So as it is right now, it is the social health insurance that we have in the country, and any person who is a Kenyan citizen, 18 years and above, is eligible for the cover. The fund has different covers, different programs. For those in the formal sector, they pay a premium of between 1.5 US dollars to 17 US dollars, depending on their salary range. However, those in the informal sector, they pay a flat rate of $5 or thereabout, depending on the dollar. So that is basically a brief introduction about NHIF. Now, the reason for my work, the objectives of my work, that is the next slide. So really, it is to study the accessibility and the affordability of NHIF as a tool of primary healthcare in Kenya, and to determine its effectiveness in the coverage of COVID-19 treatment during the first year of the pandemic, and to establish mechanisms that can inform comprehensive future responses to pandemics and epidemics. And why the first year? Because we want to see how did the government respond to COVID-19? What are the challenges that maybe COVID-19 brought to light that were not as obvious if we didn't have the pandemic? So basically, the first year it is for that purpose. It is how did the government respond? Was the response effective? Was it all encompassing? Did we have gaps? Can we now say NHIF is effective as a tool of primary healthcare in Kenya? So the methods used for the study, it was a desktop research. 18 published papers and great literature were reviewed. Also, data from the Ministry of Health and Kenya Parliament website was extracted. The next slide, please. So what did I find? Well, I found that NHIF remains the primary cover in Kenya. Kenya is a country with a total of 53 million people, and only 17% of Kenyans have access to health insurance or can be able to afford health insurance. Of the 17%, 16% are covered by NHIF. So that leaves only about 1% to private insurance. So we can see already that the numbers are not so good. Then we see that the informal sector in Kenya is the biggest sector. It has around 83% of Kenyans work in the informal sector. So then again, that leaves around 17% of Kenyans working in the formal sector. And so if you do a quick calculation, you will see how those who are covered by insurance, how it is closely mirroring to those who are in the formal sector. So the informal sector comprises of 35% of NHIF membership, and NHIF continues to struggle when it comes to the informal sector, because remember, while the formal sector, it is mandatory deduction, the informal sector is voluntary. So it is up to someone to decide, I want to take up the cover or not. Therefore, NHIF membership continues to be biased towards the formal sector. NHIF membership also continues to be biased towards the urban center.
Sorry, Mwangi, you have 2 minutes to make your conclusions because of our time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So you have NHIF covering most hospitals in the urban centers. You have it covering hospitals mostly from medium to large hospitals, and not covering the dispensaries. And these are the healthcare providers in the rural areas. So you find in Kenya, we have 60% of people living in rural areas. They can only access dispensary and clinics, and these are not covered by NHIF. So in a snapshot, you just see that NHIF continues to be inaccessible to most Kenyans. It continues to be unaffordable. 75% of those in informal sector cannot afford the $5 premium, especially in a country that continues to struggle with poverty. So my recommendation, my conclusion, that the fund needs to respond to respond more inclusively in the future. Unfortunately, because of time, I have to mention that when COVID came, because we are looking at it in the face of COVID, that when COVID came, NHIF did not cover those in the informal sector against the virus. So any person who went for treatment against COVID-19, unless you are working as a civil servant, unless you are working as a county government staff, you are not covered against COVID-19. So you find that those who had a superior cover, because the government has topped up for them to have a superior cover, the civil servants, the security forces, and those working for the local governments, then basically the people from the informal sector were not covered for COVID-19. So you have that the government did not respond to the treatment of COVID-19 equally to its citizens. That there are those who received the cover, though they are the members of NHIF, and there are those who did not receive the cover, though they were members of NHIF. So we are saying in future, such biases need to be removed. We are saying that the government need to reformulate policies that removes inequality. NHIF is a tool that is supposed to remove inequality in access to healthcare. Then it cannot have policies that actually further that inequality, so that we have people who are able to access certain treatments and others are not able to access certain treatment. NHIF need to increase access to its accredited health facilities, especially in rural areas. And finally, management of NHIF funds should be more efficient. Right now, we have the fund spending 45% of its income on administrative purpose, and the more of the pie cake that goes to the administrative purpose, the fewer fund. We don't have enough fund for actually the work of the NHIF, the reason why NHIF is in place. We cannot have 55% going to actually providing healthcare services to people, and only a whole 45% going to administrative expenses. So unfortunately, I had to rush in my presentation. I hope you got a point or two or a feel of how effective NHIF was in the in the face of COVID-19.
Thank you very much. May we give a round of applause? Please, Leah, Mangi, stay in the room. Probably we might have a minute or so Maybe there is a question or two from the participants here towards your presentation. So very quickly, please allow me to invite Nicola Yon to make a presentation. And please, Nicola, I would advise that you go straight to the impact of COVID-19 on Zimbabwe social security systems with the case study you did, so that you maximize on at least the 8 minutes you have, or maybe you can even use 5. Thank you.
Always being the last one is always being, you get your time cut short, but anyway, I'll try. So let me just go straight into the impact of COVID-19 from an institutional perspective. NASA being being the largest provider of social security in Zimbabwe. NASA was hit on both fronts, like at the country level. Were we prepared? No. Did we try and fight it? Yes. We had what we did first was that what was the impact was generally we had a decline in our contribution base. According to the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries survey that was conducted in June 2020, over 1 million people were thrown out of the formal employment in 2020, and those who remained in formal employment saw their income shrink by 50%. And these are all people where NASA gets the majority of its contributions from. These are our contributors. We had backlogs in benefit processing as staff were reduced. We had to cut our office staff. Initially, the office closed down totally, meaning that our beneficiaries could not get access. Those that were wanting to apply for their benefits could not get access to their benefits because they could not process them unless the person was already on the payroll. But even then, the payrolls were a bit delayed because the officers in charge of the payrolls had to be at home because of COVID-19. But eventually, the offices opened up, but we still had a lot of backlogs because we started off at 20%, I think it was 20%, gradually going to 50%. And then now currently we were on 100%. I'm not going in tandem with my presentation that's being beamed there, although those are just pictures of what was happening in Zimbabwe at the time. There was a slowdown in investment projects. Our OSH, Occupational Safety and Health, factory inspections declined by 66.8%, and this saw an increase in fatal injuries as companies flaunted OSH regulations. We have our disabled clients could no longer visit our rehabilitation center that's based in Bulawayo, leading them to suffer from pressure sores, circulation disorders, and other contingencies or illnesses that are associated with those who are disabled, especially the paraplegics and the quadriplegics. Now, what was our response? To try and stem the effect of the COVID-19 as a result of the effect it had on us, NASA decided to do a suspension of penalties and surcharges for late payments, the idea being to ease pressure on business. We had a suspension of new legal proceedings for current debtors. Our contributions remained though, but now there was a bit of flexibility in terms of payment because the idea was that now companies were now directing the much needed funds towards trying to stay afloat and could not further afford contributions to NASA. So there was a bit of a suspension and penalties in that because we normally have penalties for late payment of contributions. Then we also introduced the implementation of internet-based payment platforms because we no longer wanted physical contact. So we're discouraging employers from coming to our offices. They now had to do their payments online. And this, we face challenges because of the systems. People were not used to the systems. So you find there were always complaints in terms of the systems, in terms that a person would have paid online, but there was delays for the payments to reflect. And then our clients are not receiving their receipts online. But now that has stabilized a bit. Assessment of our injured workers who were considered the essential workers who were going to work was suspended, so they were left neglected. We also had regular benefit reviews To preserve some of the value of our benefits, we had, and these benefit reviews were based on actuarial aspects. There was a 200 increase across all boards in 2020. We introduced a revolving load fund for pensioners. We had a payment of discretionary bonuses from April to October 2020. We introduced grocery allowances, and we increased our ad hoc actuarial valuations. We also there was also the declaration of COVID-19 as a work-related disease if contracted at the workplace. There was a renewed drive to extend social security to the informal sector as NASA realized that this sector was being ravaged by the effects of the pandemic. On the investment front, we renegotiated the lower rentals for our tenants. We recalibrated our investment strategy based on sectorial assessments of the impact of COVID-19. Then what did we learn as NASA from this COVID-19 pandemic? We learned that there's need for agility in response to crisis. Shock responsive social security systems, which are more inclusive, are needed. We needed flexible business models. We needed agility in internal business processes for the authority. We also learned that we need to increase the number of benefits, such as unemployment benefits, the ultimate aim being universal social protection for all. Then just to wind up the discussion, my conclusion is very short. We were not prepared for COVID-19. Did we try? Yes. Was it enough? No. We now need to have a more comprehensive, inclusive, and universal social protection policy, which is responsive. Because as Prof said, we should look at the past. COVID-19, yes, is new when it came in the form of COVID-19, but there was once the Spanish flu, which killed almost 50 million people worldwide and a 500 million infection rate. If countries had learned from that, we would have been better prepared now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and apologies once more. You were the last speaker, and you were really restricted with time. We've got a minute to go, and I believe we might not even go into further discussions in terms of the questions you have or the contributions you might have towards this session, because any minute from here, the system is going to log us out. So allow me just to thank my speakers, Leah Mutoni Mwangi from Kenya. Thank you very much for your presentation. And also Nicola Yon Muti Murefu from Zimbabwe. Thank you very much for your presentation. And last but not the least, Mr. Richard Rory, thank you very much for your presentation. Then we could give a round of applause to the panelists and also to the session chair. And lastly, to you, the participants, for attending this session. Thank you very much to you all, and let's give ourselves a round of applause.